The research, medical research or any research.
Yeah.
This, has been full-fledged industry, a lot of money spent, a lot of scholars working there. So in the context of all the search engines and AI, etc., what impact it is going to create on this research industry where, you have every major university or anyone. So talk from that point of view, that as far as the actual research being done in the labs, even many companies spend so much money and manpower to find a drug or something.
Mm-hmm.
So talk from that point of view,
okay.
research point of view. Yeah.
Sure. I think I'll talk about maybe the positives first and then perhaps the negatives.
Okay.
On the positive side, I think that there is tremendous scope for AI in things like drug discovery. There are lots of companies that are trying to do it. You might know that
every new life sciences company has to do something with AI.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have anything, now they
Sure.
go to their website.
Sure.
There is always word AI somewhere.
Yeah. And I think a lot of those efforts, in my opinion, I think are good. I think we have to do all those trials and experiments to figure out if we can use AI. So I'm very optimistic, or rather, I'm very supportive of what they're trying to do. Now, keep in mind that we used an AI system called AlphaFold to solve the protein folding problem, right? Which is like a big success story of AI. Now that, in fact, won the Nobel Prize in 2024, right? It's been recognized with the Nobel. So, but again, keep in mind that those are not large language models or chatbots. That's a deep learning system. But anyway, the point is that I think AI is generally can be very useful to furthering, advancing medicine and drug discovery and so on. And I know from talking to researchers, medical researchers, biomedical researchers, I'm hearing that like one really good thing and one maybe not so good thing. The good thing is that they can do literature searches and so on much more efficiently. They can have an agentic system, do a whole bunch of literature surveys for you, literature searches for you. And because these things have been trained on so much data, they can actually form connections between things that may be very difficult for a human to identify, right? Because there are lots of things going. I mean, the published literature is vast. Which single human had actually read all the literature to know that a paper from 20 years ago and a paper from last year, they actually mentioned the same kind of thing, and you can connect them and maybe something good comes out of it. So these things are really good at connecting the dots and giving you interesting hypotheses to think about and explore. That's good, clearly. Meaning the top of the funnel has gotten much wider, right? But on the flip side, I'm also hearing that in a lot of fields, people are using AI to actually write the papers. They're using AI to create the experiments, run the experiments, write the papers, and so on. And so the number of new papers coming into certain fields apparently has exploded, right? Now, are these good papers, path-breaking papers? Unclear. Many of them might just be average papers. Now, we have always had average, mediocre papers in any field, but maybe the volume of such papers has suddenly become much bigger, which means that people who have to review these papers have to use AI tools to review the papers, right? So the cat and mouse game is in full swing right now. So I think on the one hand, I think hopefully new discoveries are going to be made, but I think also the research community will have to wade through a lot of sort of, subpar, mediocre stuff because of this explosion of what I think of as, second-tier research. So both are simultaneously true. But overall, I'm actually very optimistic that using AI technologies, we are going to advance medicine in a rapid rate.
So Rama, how should we use AI in our daily life as a regular person, Upendra Mishra, and also Upendra Mishra as a businessman?
Right.
So just talk about that.
Okay.
And if you have some of your own experience, that how you use AI in your life, if you can talk about that.
Sure. I think I'll recommend a few concrete things that folks could try. But before I do that, maybe I just want to make like a philosophical statement, which is I think, there are two ways to think about AI, and they are complementary. It's not either or. You can actually use AI to make your life easier, right? To make your work easier. Every one of our jobs, there are a bunch of things which is kind of grunt work, boring things. We don't really want to do them. We want to do them as fast as possible. And you can use AI to do those things, right? That's totally fine. No problem. But I think it's also important to look at those tasks that you're doing, which are sort of very central to the job that you're doing, and ask yourself, how can I use AI to make that richer? And by richer, I mean, how can I make the output of whatever I do or my team does or my organization does, how can I make it more valuable, right, to the people who consume it? more sophisticated. The value could come from maybe I do it faster, maybe I do it cheaper, maybe I do it better. Some dimension. There are some dimensions that matter. So you have to ask yourself that. And the reason I'm sort of describing these two variations is because it's very easy and tempting to actually do only the first and not do the second, right? Everyone is trying to automate something in their lives using AI, and that's great. But they're stopping there. They are not asking themselves the harder question, which is, how can I sort of reimagine what I can do to make my output more valuable? So I strongly encourage folks to keep both those lenses in their mind as we go along. And let me give you an example from my own work, right, where I'm struggling to try to apply this thing. So let's say that I need to create a new lecture for a particular course that I'm teaching. And let's assume for a moment that lecture is going to take me like a week to get ready. Most new lectures take a lot of effort to get it just right? The PowerPoint has to be right, whatever other things that go with it, all have to be just right. So it usually takes several days, maybe a week, let's say. Now, if I use AI, if I use Claude or GPT 5.5 or whatever, I can probably develop the same lecture material in about a day and a half, is my guess, because I've tried it. So what I can do is I can just spend a day and a half, create the lecture, and just get on with my life and do something else with the remaining 3.5 days that week, right? Or I can take a different view. I can say, you know what, I'm still going to spend the 1 week on the lecture, but I know using these tools, I can actually get the lecture deck done by Tuesday lunchtime, but I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to really force myself, I'm going to ask myself, how can I make that whole lecture experience much more valuable to the student, right? And that's not easy for me to figure out. I need to really think deep thoughts to try to figure this out. I need to maybe talk to people. I need to do some research on my own. But maybe I'll come back and say, you know what? Apart from the lecture, I'm going to create an immersive simulation of that material. I'm going to create this 3D game where students can engage with each other in this 3D game and experientially learn what's going on, right? So I can do a simulator, I can do a game, I can do a whole bunch of other things. And all those things would be prohibitively expensive for me to do pre-AI. But now, maybe I can actually do it. So in this alternate world, I've gone from, instead of just having a lecture by Friday, I have a lecture, a simulation, a game, 3 other things, the totality of which have made that particular lecture experience much more valuable to my student, right? So that's an example of what I'm talking about. So I usually shorten this thing to say, don't just use AI to make your work easier. Use AI also to make your work richer, right? That's an example of that. So that's the philosophical statement. Now, in terms of tactics, what I want to say is that I think the first thing I want to tell people is that make sure that you use AI every single day. And number one, use it quote unquote indiscriminately, meaning what these things can do and what they cannot do is changing constantly as new models come out. Sometimes people just try something a couple of months ago for something, it doesn't work all that well, they just give up on it. Bad idea, because these things are constantly changing. So I would say use it for things where you think it's not even all that applicable, right? Because you'll suddenly realize it can actually do much more than you thought it could do, right? And that's very important to know. And researchers call this the jagged frontier, right? The things it can do and the things it can't do, you just can't predict what those things are. And so number one, use it indiscriminately. Number one. The number two, use agentic tools. Don't just use chatbots. So for instance, Claude has Claude Chat. It also has something called Claude Cowork, right? And the idea is that instead of uploading some file to Claude and asking it to do something with the file, and then it gives you another file, you download it and stuff like that. That is very 2025. Don't do it. If you use something like Claude Cowork or ChatGPT Work, which just came out last week, you can actually point the AI system to your local computer with all the files in it, and then you can have it work directly with the files, right? And I will tell you, I knew that this was powerful intellectually for a long time, but I didn't understand it viscerally till last Thanksgiving. And during the Thanksgiving holiday, I was just playing around with these things, and I was like, my mind was blown as to how powerful they are. And so if you haven't tried things like Claude Cowork or ChatGPT Work for your everyday thing, please give it a try. I think you'll actually be shocked and surprised by how capable these things are. So that's the second piece of advice. Now, but given all this thing, there's actually a serious risk you need to be cognizant of, which is that a lot of people use AI to do their writing. A lot of people use AI to take some 5-page article and summarize it into a paragraph, into bullet points. I totally understand the temptation to do that. But I think that, and at least for me personally, writing is a form of thinking. I often, when I write, my thoughts actually take shape while I'm writing. And in fact, when I write, I realize that the thing I thought was a clever idea was actually a stupid idea once I see it in like paper.
Yeah.
But then that's okay because I can make it better once I see it. So since writing is a form of thinking, you don't want to outsource your writing too much because you're basically outsourcing your thinking. And if that happens, I think that our ability to think more complex, deep, sophisticated thoughts is actually going to get affected. So be very careful in letting AI do your writing for you. Piece of advice. Second piece of advice is about reading. I know it's very tempting, particularly if you have some AI slop. You probably want to use AI to summarize the AI slop for you.
Sure, yeah.
Right? It feels kind of bad to be a human spending a lot of time reading AI slop, right? I think I read somewhere that 41% of LinkedIn posts are AI slop, apparently. So
I don't know. I mean, emails we are getting, you can tell that.
It's just ridiculous.
You can just read.
Yeah. But I think that, so make sure that you read high quality content, written content, long form content, hopefully more books if you can, because I think the ability to read complex long form content without AI and books for that matter, it builds the ability to take a thought and work the thought for a long period of time, right? It sort of is like a proxy for attention span.
Sure.
And I think that if we use AI to summarize all these things and get TLDRs and bullet points for everything, we are basically slowly narrowing our attention span, at some point, you won't be able to think anything complicated. You can only think simplistic thoughts.
One day I was driving and listening to NPR, and I was shocked because I wrote my book After the Fall last year, novel. It took 4 years to write that, and I'm very happy with the outcome and everything. And then I was listening to this NPR, the interview was on the AI, and they were interviewing a writer. She said that she writes 200 novels every year.
Wow.
And I was totally blown away how anybody, for me to write one takes 4 years, how you can write 200 novels. It's smaller sorts like this, but she said the same thing, that she has some idea, she chat GPT, puts on Amazon, and many of even one copy is not sold, but even 100 or 200 are sold. There is some revenue without any investment.
Right.
But I think
so the revenue is small, but the effort is even smaller. So it makes it worthwhile for her.
But I was surprised at how anybody can do that. But interesting thing.
But interesting, right, Upendra? So the question is, what is the effect on the readers of those things?
Yeah, that's the key. That is the key. That what type of novel you're really going to write, and who is going to read it. If somebody has read it, I would love to go and interview all those people who have read all those 200 books written by her. But interesting thing was that I was going to give a talk about my book After the Fall in Worcester, at the India Society of Worcester. It's about 45-minute drive from my home to the place. I started going. I was very nervous, what I'm going to talk about, things like that.
Yeah.
So idea came, I said, let me ask Google. So I said, hey, Google, what do you know about After the Fall by Upendra Mishra? And the Google comes, give me the entire summary of the After the Fall. And even I could have never summarized by myself. Then the Google asked me that what else you would like to know. Then I became how much information then. So I asked a question which, so my question was, what do you know about the main characters of the After the Fall? And boom, right away, she knew about each and every character. Then I asked, what do you think about this character? And then she explains about, the character Anamika or Maria or Owen. And I was just totally blown away.
Yeah.
So the book is not in audio or anything. It was just printed book. But they had ability to search, pinpoint. And so and the information, because I can see it was 100% accurate information. Their philosophy, the character. So my question to you is, how sometimes these channels or platforms can be so accurate?
Yeah, I think first of all, the entire book is probably, if it is not already part of the training data for these models, let's say if it's published after the training cutoff date, if there is a PDF of it out there on the web somewhere, you search for it, you find the PDF, it's going to get loaded up into its context, right? Into its input. And you may not even realize it's happening. So it basically is quote unquote reading the whole book and then answering all your questions. And so I'm not entirely surprised that it can do these things because it has been trained on a lot of information. And so for it to reason about and answer questions about anything that's in its context window, it's not terribly surprising to me.
But the speed is incredible. Like if they have to, I mean, I was just totally blown away.
I think if I remember right, I think the newer models probably can, like the size of the input is like a few Harry Potter novels. It can hold the entirety of it in just for every question. And so that's not hard to do. And I think that now you have to keep in mind that as this context becomes bigger and bigger, it'll start making more and more mistakes. But my guess is that one book is still small enough that it can be quite accurate.
Published last year.
Yeah. And the published last year only matters if it's not in the training data, and therefore they have to do a Google search to pick it up.
Okay.
But what I mean is, if you give it, let's say, 10 novels, unrelated to each other, War and Peace, whatever, whole bunch of novels, and then your book somewhere, and then you ask for something about your book, maybe it'll get it wrong. Because there's so much other stuff that's irrelevant that might quote unquote confuse it. And so, those are some of the things that affect the quality of what you're getting from these models. Fundamentally, it's all about sort of whatever it's seeing as part of every question is called the context, and the context has to be relevant to the question that's being asked. There's a lot of irrelevant stuff. It's more likely to get it wrong.